Alright everybody, we are back with a brand new tier list. I haven't done one in a while. So I went ahead and put every tier 1 unit down here. All these units base value are at the most 25 gold and they're not good. They are decent, but overall they're not going to do anything. I also put Harpy in here because it's easily the worst tier 2 unit. But it was a good way for us to get started. So there are 2 units that aren't in here, which are the 2 new units, which is Gatling Gun, upgraded Vulcan Cannon, and then the Sea Dragon Lifebender. I would put both of them in B and then A for their respective upgrades. And the biggest reason I would put both of them in those and not in S is mostly because with Gatling Gun, Vulcan Cannon, a lot of it depends on placement, and honestly some of the waves that, even if it is good, it's bad because the wave is a backline shooting wave and it cannot reach, or it can't reach enough to do a good amount of damage. So a lot of it depends on placement, and it's not always that great even if it says it is. And Sea Dragon Lifebender is a little bit difficult because it does heal your team a lot better than Pilgrim. The problem is it does hurt the Sea Dragon Lifebender from healing. So you either have to have a shit ton of them, or you have to have, a Pilgrim also, or Butcher Lifesteal for the aura or something for it to be worth it, in my opinion. Now, obviously, it still can, I would say the possibility which one could end up being better. I would say that Sea Dragon Lifebender is much more annoying and better, but Vulcan Cannon is obviously still good. So they're still both good units. Definitely try them out, use them, but be careful where you place them and how you use them for sure. So let's go ahead and get started with the rest of this tier list. Angler base value is not good. It's 40 gold, and you definitely have to build around it early for it to get stacks to turn into Bounty Hunter, to turn into Kingpin as early as possible. But base value, not good, but the ceiling of it being good as far as going into Bounty Hunter and then Kingpin is probably one of the biggest in the game for sure. But the downside is very difficult. I'm going to go Adam next. So we already have Proton here. And so essentially $90 for this Adam is fantastic value. Proton is 20 and then 70 to upgrade. This thing, even without Steed or Starcaller boosting its mana, or Magician as the spell boosting its mana, the fact that it has pure attack and a immaterial defense is the only unit in the game that has both, is awesome as a tier 1. It's definitely, I would say, one of the best values in the game as far as only costing $90 to buy one and then upgrade it. It's not gonna win you games, but early game it's definitely gonna save you and save you some waves and some rounds and stuff. Base Aqua Spirit, I don't really think is that amazing. The bounce does help, and you know what, I'll give it a B because I think the biggest thing that pops it into B is it having Arcane Defense, which we will probably talk about a whole lot in this tier list as we did the last one, but I'll try to make it quick. So Arcane Defense is the best defense in the game. Possibly Swift sometimes, but Arcane for sure. And then Magic Attack is the best attack in the game. So those units that have both or one or the other, sometimes that is a huge factor as far as where they're placed or just during the waves. But Aqua Spirit's bounce can definitely help you even early game get rid of some backline lizard sins and whatnot. The fact that it can bounce over and hit him. I'm also gonna put Gargoyle in B because I think the value for 40 gold having magic attack and arcane defense is pretty good for early game and only having 40 gold. I would put both of these on the lower end, like B- tier. But I do relatively trust them as, early game to at least do what I think is their job. Egg, I have to put in B, and the biggest reason why is it arguably, I think it's probably the only thing in the game that has the biggest upside and the biggest downside of using it. So what the egg does is you place it, anything that attacks it will take damage. The problem is it does not automatically attack, it just sits there. It takes 2 waves for it to hatch, and then hatches into this Hydra. If the egg is broken, it still hatches into Hydra, but the Hydra is much, much worse. I'm also going to put Hydra in B, and the biggest reason why is because if it's the worst Hydra, then it's probably at best C tier, but if it is, the 2-wave fully hatched Hydra, it's probably an S tier unit for sure. It's definitely worth it. The problem is it's very hard to work around the egg, and if it does break, that's a whole lot of downside for your team. Upgraded looter I'll give a B as well. And the biggest reason why I won't put him in C is because you can mix it up and go have him get Mythium for you. So instead of him being in your lane during the wave, he will instead go gather Mythium. I think it's like 10 by the end of that wave, which is pretty good. For one wave, you're getting an extra 10, I believe it is. And it's only $65 to upgrade, so $75 for an okay unit that you can instead get Mythium if you're, ahead a lot or not going to get sent, you think, or whatever. Regular Bazooka, I'm putting in C. He's fucking awful, and I'll never get over it. I don't trust him at all, but he can sometimes hold some waves if he's decent. And he has a lot of double good waves. But unless you're putting him to Pyro and Zeus, it's not usually too crazy worth putting him out. Now, Butcher, I've seen another tier list from a very popular Legion player who I would consider dumb now. The fact that he put Butcher and Lord of Death in B tier, I think is fucking crazy. Butcher easily has the best aura in the game, having up to 6 units have lifesteal as well as himself. And if you upgrade him, which we'll get to eventually, he can also heal people. And he does pretty decent. If you start him on wave 1, you can push 2 workers instantly and he's going to clear it, no problem. And then Lord of Death, I would argue, is the best tier 6 unit in the game. Magic attack, arcane defense, spawns units. If that unit that he spawns kills something in the wave, it heals, so it pretty much never dies, especially if you run cash out and start him early. And yeah, I would argue that he's probably the best tier 6. He's definitely in the argument for it. As well as they just buffed him in this most recent patch. So since both base values are there, we're putting Head Chef and Hades up there. So much more health between both of these two, and then Head Chef also gives even extra lifesteal and heals someone every so often. And Hades just has so much more health and spawns an even, bigger health dragon, I guess you could say, as well for its spawning unit. Definitely not B tier, definitely both. At the worst, you're putting them in A tier, but that's the base version. The fucking Head Chef and Hades are S tier units for sure. If you can use them, pick them up for sure. They're never gonna cost you the game at all. They're never gonna be awful. No way. Bounty Hunter, so this is the second version of Angler. So you can upgrade your Angler at any point, but when it has full stacks or full mana, whichever you'd like to call it, you can then upgrade it into Bounty Hunter, which he then gains stacks to get to Kingpin, which I would put in S tier as well. So a full stack Kingpin is absolutely disgusting. I think it's almost 700 damage per hit, and they hit relatively fast. Now it is 40 for him, 125 for this upgrade, and then 250 for this, so there is a lot of money going into him, but he's definitely worth it. And even if you don't have him full stacks, you know, let's just say you instantly put down an angler and upgraded it, and then got stacks into him, or you know, you didn't have full stacks in this one, whatever, he's still gonna be good. But if you can hold out for having full stack Kingpin, it's so worth it. He has so much health, he does so much damage, and that's not even including the buffs that you can get from all these games. So obviously any of these people have the right to be an S or D tier depending on your team, the wave, what you're being sent, teammates, everything. But this is overall what I've seen, what I've used, what I've faced. It's worth it for sure. Kingpin is worth it if you can pull it out. APS I'll give B. I don't think it's anything special. Now it does give extra attack speed to the up to 6 units, which is good. I don't think it doesn't feel like enough to me. Now it is only 150 just like Butcher, and it's not bad, but I think it's a little lackluster. I think when you upgrade it to the MPS, it is much better. But I think APS just doesn't really do it. It doesn't have too much health for a 150 cost, and it doesn't really do too much damage either. It's more just for the aura. Now APS does the opposite of that. It does do even more attack speed for the aura of units around it, but it does have a whole lot more health and does feel like it does a whole lot more damage as well. So definitely, you know, if you need a little bit of pick-me-up for your backline or even your frontline units or something, APS MPS is not that bad for sure, but it doesn't give me the umph to S for sure. And if I'm taking other aura units, I would say MPS is on the lower end of that as far as am I taking Butcher, Starcaller, that sort of deal. Radiant Halo. I think I'll give Radiant Halo and then Arc of Justice A and S. I think these are arguably one of the best boss killers in the game, if not the best, mostly just because they're backline units, so they have as much time to damage the boss. So what they do is ramp up. So when it attacks the same unit for X amount of time, as long as it's attacking the same unit, it's doing more and more damage over time. So against bosses it's great because obviously it's just attacking that one unit, and it does have pure damage, so no matter what wave it is, it's going to do X amount of damage, period. And it's pretty solid, only 200 gold, and then I think it's like 360 or 420 for the upgrade. I honestly forget, maybe even more. But they are worth it for sure, and they can be helped by some mana buffs like from Steed or Starcaller upgrade, which, you know, I'm sure I might be saying a lot of names that you guys don't get yet, but we'll get there. So with Bone Warrior here, he has actually 3 variations of upgrades. Fire Archer, I'm gonna give B. I think it's okay if you need a backline unit, and it helps a little bit as far as boss killing ability or just kind of bigger unit killing ability, but it's not amazing. But also you have to factor in that Bone Warrior is 15 gold and then this is 65, so for 80 gold you're getting a decent backline unit, especially early game, or if you just need some kind of backline unit or some sort of boss killer and you don't have one. Like, are they gonna win you the round? Probably not. But also built-in lifesteal is a huge factor. Bone Crusher is a little bit difficult. I think as far as all three of the upgrades, he's definitely the best tank of them because he's only one. And he's 95 gold, so for 110, you're getting a solid early game tank that has lifesteal, which is huge. The problem is that a lot of these low cost tanks, early game, tier, 1 through 3, I would say, as far as tanks, they fall off really hard. But early game, he is very, very solid. No slouch for sure, and definitely worth the value. Now, Dark Mage, I'm going to put into A. I think he's the best variation of the three for sure. Obviously, again, built-in lifesteal for this guy. And what he does is he buffs the attack speed of like the highest DPS unit that's closest to him, I believe, or just within range of him. So having someone like Decoiler or Fatalizer or somebody have even more attack speed is absolutely disgusting. And he's only 80 gold, so for $95 you basically have a single unit like APS MPS that also does okay damage because they turn into a magic type. So he's okay. He's definitely 100% worth the money, and he'll definitely help your team out for sure if you kind of need a little bit of a buff. Let me see if I can. Okay, so since we talked about Berserker, we said Fatalizer, but Berserker is the original one. I'll give Berserker A, honestly. I think he is one of the better boss killers in the game. The biggest problem with him is that he cannot get targeted early if it is a boss wave. If he gets targeted early, he's just like Radiant Halo. The more attacks that he does against one unit, the more damage he's going to keep doing. So he definitely needs time to scale. If you can't give that to him, then he's not going to work out. But for 190, pretty decent amount of health, high attack speed, he's very solid unit for sure. And again, especially, for wave 10 is the earliest boss killing wave. I mean, 5 is technically boss, but small one. But Fatalizer I will give S. I think the amount of health that they give this man is a whole lot better. And honestly, with any sort of buffs like Dark Mage, MPS, Lifesteal, which you have to factor in all these, which is a lot to factor in, but he can be insanely buffed, and that's not even including Legion spells like Pulverizer or anything else. He can definitely shred a team and massively help your team for sure. Now, he is on the more expensive side. I think he's 360 to upgrade, but if you can, it is worth it. Alright, let's go. I'll put Seraphim, and if I can find it, I'll put Devilfish in there as well. So these are the two versions of upgraded Polywog. The biggest reason I put them in B, I think, is because they're solid for their value. So it's essentially $15 to buy a Polywog and then 80 to upgrade, so 95 to essentially get one of these two units. Again, early game tank, solid, worth 95 gold for sure. Pretty decent overall. If you need an early backline unit, kind of, $95 for a magic damage backline unit type for early game Seraphim. Again, pretty solid. But they fall off very, very hard, like I said, the later the rounds go. So watch out. But they're worth the money. But they're on the lower end. They're in the B- area for sure. Let's see who we got out here. I'm trying to find, keep it the same people. Alright, Serpent. I think Serpent and then Decoiler are... I would honestly almost put Serpent in S. This is the best strat you can run in the game, period. I swear. From the day I learned of it until today, I'm trusting this unit more than I'm trusting almost any other unit. So Serpent, the first 3 waves can 2-tap any unit. which isn't necessarily, you know, what you need to do, but the best way to put them very, very front and put your units relatively as far back as you can. The wave will pass over them, and then it will eat up any back line. So if they send you a lizard, this dude's going to pop up out of the ground, take care of that lizard for you, and then come wreck the rest. You know, if you're getting sent hermits, same situation, or any other backline units, same thing. You know, put the rest of your team at least past midway, further back than midway down your lane, and put the serpents in the very, very front row, as far up as you can, no matter where you put them. And then the wave will pass over them because they go underground. They'll come back up after a few seconds, take care of that backline for you, and make their sins basically worthless. And Declare does the same, so much more damage, insanely good boss killer as well, especially on something like 10. And again, any backline units they send, dead within a couple of hits, and it has way more health than the regular Serpent, that's for sure too. So if you are always getting sent hermits and you feel like they're ruining your team, or drakes are the auto send meta basically. So if you feel like that's the reason you're leaking or whatever, or you never get to them, or they're the only things living and that's all you're leaking, use Serpents, use Decoiler, and they will easily take care of it. Easily. Steed and Pegasus. So this is the only mana giving unit in the game, and it deserves the S tier, I think. Maybe not the original one, but still, for 80 gold, giving mana to anybody that has mana on your team, especially to boost up anglers early or anybody else, and has magic attack and arcane defense, it's pretty nasty. And honestly, for 80 gold, it's a decent amount of tankiness and attack damage for 80 gold. It's decent. It's nothing crazy. There's much better, 80 or close to 80 units that will tank more or do more damage, but the fact that its main purpose is to give mana to a bunch of other units is crazy. It's super helpful. And Pegasus, which is the upgraded version of Steed, I think is only 190 to upgrade, but has way more health, gives way more mana because it has more health. Again, magic and arcane, one of the best units in the game. They're definitely solid. Even if you only have like one mana unit, them themselves are going to be alright. Even if I'm not really running mana build or don't really have a lot of mana units, they're still worth the pickup because one, you can roll into somebody that has some mana, or if it's other people like Angler or Holy Avenger or something like that, you're still going to get extra mana given to them, so it can be worth it. And you always need as much magic and arcane defense as you can get. Pilgrim. I think honestly Pilgrim and Shefton, when I first started the game, they were probably my favorite, and then I realized that they're just not really that great. Pilgrim early game, his healing is great. The problem is it's not that much and it spreads. And honestly, I hate upgrading him to Shefton because he then doesn't heal anymore. He just gives whoever is your frontmost person like X amount of extra health. Now the Shefton does have way more health himself and does do more damage, of course, as all upgrades do. But I think it's honestly like a worse upgrade, if that makes sense, like a worse upgrade ability. To me, I would rather him still be able to heal and not just give whoever's the frontmost unit health. And sometimes even when they do that, it's the wrong unit, which can honestly at least cost you the wave. So I think that's a little annoying. They're still good, don't get me wrong, but I mean, honestly, if you're going for a healing unit, you might as well just take Sea Dragon, and I hate to say that because they're awful, but it is what it is. Let's see who we can see. 2 of... okay, so we'll do this Oathbreaker. So this is the upgraded version of Chain Fist right here in the bottom left. Yeah, I have to give it C. And the biggest reason why, so their ability, quote unquote, is once they get below half health, they then do bounce around and attack multiple units much faster and do more damage. The problem is by the time it's already at half health, it's basically going to get just murdered, especially the later the game goes. Early rounds, if you need somebody to kind of hold, or you just need somebody to do as much damage as possible, for a good amount of, value, he's alright. I don't know why it's he, but it is fine. So it's only 95 to then buy this, and then 75 to upgrade, so 95. It's alright. I might put it in B, but overall I think the fact that it gets better when it has such low health, by the time that it is then doing better, it's already basically dead, so it's not that great. But again, because of these early units, the earlier the waves are, because they're early units, the better they are. If that makes sense. So not awful, but at the best, it's like a B minus, and that's being nice. So alright, so Harpy. Sky Queen, honestly, I'm going to go all the way to A. So base Harpy is terrible, okay? It needs to move as much as possible to get as much mana as possible to then have a lot of attack speed. It has like no health, honestly doesn't do a lot of damage unless it's full mana, which it will never be unless you have steeds. But Sky Queen naturally gains mana the more it attacks, and can even be further boosted by people like Steed or Starcaller area, and does a whole lot of damage if it has enough time to do it, and will do more and more because the more mana it has, the more faster it's attacking. Sky Queen itself is worth it. And honestly, you could start, you could on wave 1, buy Harpy, upgrade it, start Sky Queen, and push a couple workers, and that's going to hold the first 2 waves by itself for sure, and then you'll need some help, but still, it's Sky Queen's solid, and they keep buffing Harpy, Sky Queen, mostly because Harpy is easily the worst tier 2 unit, but I don't think Sky Queen needs the buffs that it's keep getting, but I think it's mostly because their pick rate's low because nobody wants to deal with Harpy. But it is a solid unit, so keep on using it. Since we put Gargoyle out earlier, Green Devil, I think for its value, deserves an A spot. Again, magic attack, arcane defense, for 160 essentially, so 40 to buy Gargoyle, 120 to buy the upgrade for Green Devil. Is nasty. It has a whole lot of defense, tankiness for a tier 2 unit. It's definitely worth the money. Yeah, I don't have anything bad to say about Green Devil. He can definitely hold up your team for sure. Okay, so there's 4 eyes. So Boar to me is the most overrated tier 6 unit in the game, aside from maybe Egg, but nobody really talks too much about Egg. But Boar, so you have to place Boar in the very, very back of your lane for it to run all the way up and do some damage. Does it do a lot of damage? Sure, but it's spread out and not, the number is high, but the damage on certain units are not. And this honestly has negatively affected my builds more than it has positively affected my builds, because basically by the time Boar gets up there, it's either your units are already fighting, or Boar is the first one, which it pretty much should be, but it dies instantly because it has fortified defense, which is the worst in the game. So I wouldn't trust it. I'll give 4 eyes an A spot, and the biggest reason why they're even here is mostly because they're tier 6 units and have a lot of health. And you know, if you're running cash out and you start a boar, it's going to clear for a while, but you know, if I'm trusting any tier 6, I'm not picking up egg and I'm not picking up boar, if you know what I'm saying. I'm picking up every other one for sure. Since we're talking about some tier 6 units, Soul Gate, I think I have to put it in A and S. So what Soul Gate does is spawn units for you. So it goes up the mana, and then it spawns a unit, and then it takes away some of its health. Yes, that's very annoying, but you can definitely work around it with, you know, lifesteal. If you have a mana build, honestly, at least it will then spawn the units quicker, because it does take a couple seconds for it to keep spawning. I think it's 6 units. Six. I think it stays at 6, or it goes 6 to like 7 or 8 when you upgrade it. But honestly, the units have a pretty good amount of health and do a pretty good amount of damage, as they should for essentially a tier 6 unit, but you're spawning multiple of them. But it's definitely worth it. Yeah, I would, if you can run it, it's definitely not going to be awful. But you do kind of have to watch it sometimes. If you're running Sea Dragon, the Sea Dragon will keep healing that, instead of frontline units, which can cause big problems, trust me. So watch out for that aspect of it. Honeyflower, I'm putting Honeyflower in C, honestly. It's good for the first 3 waves, and then it's basically never good again. For new players, yes, this will clear basically the first 3 waves essentially by itself, because it is very powerful early game. But once it reaches wave 4, it's pretty much dead in the water. It doesn't do a whole lot of damage. Yes, the area effect is great, and it will keep doing decent amount of damage, but definitely it already falls off after 3. And then Death Cap. Death Cap I will give A, because it does get so much more health, and the only reason I put it more in A, 1 is because it's a magic attack type, but 2 because as every unit in the game, certain waves it's very good and certain waves it's very bad or lackluster, but the waves that Death Cap is, you know, good or even double good, with how much health it has and how much health it could keep getting depending on your role. The area effect is disgusting, but this is like A minus B plus unit upgraded. I know it's 130 for Honeyflower. I think it's like 260 to upgrade, but steer clear of it, new players. I promise you, stop running it. I know it's good for the first couple waves, but after that, get it the fuck out. Build 1 and just leave it. So since we keep bringing up Starcaller, we will go Disciple. I would say Disciple is an A and Starcaller is an S. Disciple is a solid start. Definitely can build a mana circle around it to get Starcaller, but it does have essentially an alting ability where it can 1-tap a lot of units early game or 2-tap them. Definitely some boss killing ability as well. Once you upgrade it into Starcaller, then the aura of up to 6 units around it gains faster mana regen, which is what I've been talking about a lot so far. So definitely build around this if you can. And it even does more damage, has more health, you know, like every other upgrade. But I would argue that this is, I would say in order of auras, I would say Butcher, then Starcaller, and then MPS, and then we'll get to Templar in a little bit, but it's definitely up there, and then maybe Leviathan, but it's shitty. So since we talked about Leviathan right there, Tempest, honestly I'm putting Tempest in C. It's, for 90 gold, it doesn't do shit. I mean, not really. It's not gonna win you waves. It's not gonna hold. It doesn't do anything. Now, Leviathan, The only reason why I'm going to put Leviathan in A is just because of its aura effect. So up to, again, 6 units around, you see the trend with the auras. 6 units around it that are flying get extra attack speed, I believe it's attack speed. Or damage amplifying attacks or something. So be very careful when building around Tempest and Leviathan because some units change when you... so like let's just say Gargoyle for example. Gargoyle, stock 40 gold Gargoyle is a flying unit, but when you upgrade it into Green Devil it is no longer a flying unit. And then some units are like Wild Shroom and Canopy, which we'll get to in a moment. We'll just do them next. Wild Shroom itself is not flying. You upgrade it to Canopy, it then is. So you must be careful. It will tell you if you hover over the whatchamacallit fighter and hold down control. It'll tell you if it's a flying unit, but just be very careful. That's the only reason it's an A. The unit itself is awful. The aura carries it into A. It's a B tier unit, but aura will give it. So again, since we talked about that, Wild Shroom and Canopy, I think I have to keep out of S. The biggest reason why, so these units start both with half health, but they do regen health throughout the entire wave, each wave. So it has huge upside because it will have a whole lot of health, and it does have Arcane Defense, both of them, which is great. But again, the problem is that it starts with half health and trying to regen to full, which I've rarely seen a full health Wild Shroom or Canopy, and if I have, it's because they're getting massively healed by like sea dragons and shit, and not targeted to allow them to get up there. Are they good units? Absolutely. 95 gold is worth it. 180 upgrade worth it for sure. Because even, you know, the start wave of half health Canopy is more health than a lot of units in the game anyway. And full health is nasty. But be careful. Do your best to make sure they have as much time as they can to regen as much health as possible. And if you have healing units, they will survive even better. So there's that. Since we did Aqua Spirit earlier, Rogue Wave and Fire Elemental I will both give into A. Fire Elemental used to be S for me, but the more I've played, the worse it feels for me, personally. So what Rogue Wave does is damage amplifying attacks, so like Bazooka or Violet and those types of units, which we will get to if you don't know who I'm talking about. Their ultimates or abilities are amplified to units that Rogue Wave hits, and just like Aqua Spirit and Fire Elemental, these bounce. So if you don't have decoilers or somebody to get to backline units, these can sometimes take care of them by bouncing to them. Fire Elemental is 140 upgrade, Rogue Wave's 115. But Fire Elemental, same thing, bounces to unit, sets everybody on fire. Does have a lot more health than Rogue Wave, and does more damage, but it just kind of depends. You know, I would always go Fire Elemental, but if you do have a lot of, you know, ability damage, then Rogue Wave is definitely a solid pickup as well, or just build 2 and 1 them. But they're solid units, especially for their value. Less than $200 for either one you choose to buy Aqua Spirit and then upgrade whichever version. So definitely worth a pickup. Since we brought up Violet, Windhawk itself I'll put in B. It's nothing crazy, but there are a whole lot of waves, so I feel like Violet and Windhawk are double good. And then you go into Violet, I'll definitely give A. I don't think I want to give it S because I feel like unless you're having someone give it mana, I feel like it does kind of take a little bit too long, and I feel like a lot of the units that have a lot of double good waves usually means that there's a lot of waves where they're consistently double bad. And what I mean by that is depending on what wave it is, their attack and damage type could be good for that wave or bad. Again, depending on what the wave is. But Violet is definitely solid. Windhawk and Violet. Windhawk itself can clear wave 1 by itself so long as it doesn't get snailed, or it will pro leak, just FYI. Same with Oathbreaker and some of the other units if you're interested in that. So we talked about Bazooka earlier. So Bazooka's variants are Pyro, Pyro is difficult, so we'll go Zeus first. We'll get rid of Pyro. So Zeus is a 130 upgrade. I think it's a pretty solid backline damage dealer, boss killing unit, and is based off mana as well for the ultimates, or whatever you'd like to call them, abilities. Pyro is questionable. See, Pyro's much like Honeyflower, where it's very good early game, but then kind of falls off and doesn't do shit either. But it does have a pretty solid amount of health. But it's difficult. I think I have to put it in B. And the biggest reason why is because overall consistency and how much use they have in the entire game. And Pyro does not have that. Pyro, I would say, is good for the first 4 waves for sure. You could argue the first 7, but definitely after that, it's massive fall off. Doesn't really do shit. Especially if you just throw in a safety mole. If somebody's running Pyro and you can't leak them, throw in a safety mole and it'll at least help a whole lot more for the defensive aura effect. But to do Sand Badger, we'll give Sand Badger A. It has the most health for a tier 5 tank for sure. Honestly though, I'm not going to give Iron Scales an S. It just gives even more and more health. It does have Arcane Defense, but there's nothing special. It's just, if you want like the tankiest tank, nothing special about it, but you need somebody to just hold, these are your units. 195 gold, Arcane Defense, solid choice, never bad for the most part. I don't know why there's 2 Fire Lords, but I'll give them B. And then Phoenix I'll throw into S. Phoenix is absolutely disgusting, the amount of health that it has, and then it starts with full mana and loses it, and the more mana it loses, the more damage it does. So there is a plus side to that sometimes, but you have to be careful, because if it's getting mass targeted, then by the time it's reaching maximum damage, it's dead essentially. But magic attack and swift defense, which is solid defense as well, second best for sure. So there's that. And tier 6, so a little expensive. Let's see, Kitty Cat, I'll give B. So this is the only unit, so 60 gold, but the only way to make it better is feeding it fish, which is 30 gold every fish, up to 7 fish. And then if it does kill a unit though, it does get a little bit of lifesteal heal back. So it's like a solid early game for sure, and a decent start too. If you feed it a couple fish, it'll hold, but nothing too fancy. But if you do need somebody to just throw in some points, you know, during the build phase, it's worth it. 30 gold per fish, nothing crazy, so it's solid. So Mask down here, at D is AoE. It's not too great. And False Maiden, so Mask has 25 gold, False Maiden's a 70 upgrade. It's just, you know, more health, more damage unit. But then Hellraiser I will give into A. So this is all Mask. This has way more health and does way more damage, and it's 120 to upgrade. So essentially you're spending 200 bucks on this thing. More than that actually, but very solid backline unit. It does do AoE, so it attacks multiple units. So if you build a couple of them, it's going to really help your team. The problem is getting them there, because early game it can be a big reason why you're leaking, because you're not killing units, you're spreading all your damage around. Yuzora, I think I'll give Yuzora and the upgraded Yuzora. I do forget the upgraded Yuzora's name. Again, new players, this is probably one of your babies. She can clear the first 3 waves by herself, no problem, no matter what they send for the most part. And then upgraded is even nastier. So what she does is area effect a little bit of who's attacking her, as well as she has a 25% chance to dodge, I believe. It's 25 or 33 or something crazy like that. So she's dodging and not losing health, and if you have a healing unit like Pilgrim or Sea Dragon or something, Lifesteal even, she's definitely hard to kill early game. She does have this weird middle area where she kind of falls off, but at that point, you know, if you feel like she's falling off or dying, then just upgrade her. She has way more health and still's dodging, so she's solid. And she does do pure attack too, so no matter what wave it is, she's doing the same amount of damage. And Swift Defense, which is again second best, so very, very solid unit, very, very solid start as well. If you need a holding tank, she's your girl. I will do Antler next as well with the upgraded version of White Mane. Antler, solid 200 gold tank, pretty decent damage, nothing too crazy, but I think still deserves an A tier. And then White Mane definitely deserves an S tier, so this thing gets even more insane health. But what it does is another aura effect of gives up to 6 people defensive bonus somehow of some kind. I forget the specifics of what exactly it does, but it's some kind of defensive like shield type of situation. So it's very, very solid. It's the only unit that does some type of defensive thing for you, which is great. I actually take that back. Ocean Templar does kind of as well, but very solid, very worth it. Though it's very expensive, 200 and I think 355 to upgrade that. Mudman, I don't trust Mudman for shit. This is probably the highest tier unit that I'm gonna put the worst. 140 gold tank that doesn't do shit for damage and has the worst defense of the game, which is fortified. Gets absolutely ran through. Gollum I will give A, and the biggest reason why I'll give him A is because Mudman does have this effect where you can make him harden, which means that he takes, like, you know, a lot less damage and shit that wave. But the problem is if you mess up your harden and they don't send you, or you didn't even get close to leaking or whatever, he is then bad the next wave. So you have to definitely get good at hardening and figure out when to and whatnot. But do not trust this man. He's awful. But Gollum has a shit ton more health and is alright in retrospect. Oh, who's next? Alright. Millennium. I'll give Millennium an A and a Doomsday a S. Tier 6 unit, backline, tank shooting, arcane defense. And then when it kills a unit, it does like an area effect explosion, so it does more damage. Same with Doomsday. Doomsday just shit ton more health, more damage as usual. Nothing crazy, so definitely solid. Holy Avenger. I'll do the same. So the biggest thing with Holy is the biggest downfall is having it not reach full mana. So when it reaches full mana, it does an area effect like slamming hit for a little while, which definitely makes it great. And Sovereign has an insane amount of health and can definitely be massive buffed with life steals, heals, steeds, as far as mana gains and whatnot. But sometimes it's a little lackluster in reaching that point if it gets targeted early. So definitely watch out for that. Elite Archer, Elite Archer itself, I'll put in B and I'll put Trinity in A. I honestly might put Trinity in S because it does some nasty backline damage. Nothing bad to say. It does split attacks, so honestly we'll keep that in A just because it does do that. Same with Elite Archer. It does split attacks, but it does do a high amount of damage. Arcane Defense. Nothing bad to say about it though, other than that it splits, but it does do high damage, so it'll kill him. Golden Buckler, nothing crazy. And then I forget what upgraded Golden Buckler is called. Honestly, that might be Oathbreaker in that. No, that's Oathbreaker, but I forget what that is. Solid 135 for the upgrade, 50 for regular stock value. Quote unquote takes reduced damage from ranged units. Yeah, it's bullshit. Don't listen to it. Alright unit early game, but falls off for sure. Bunk. Bunk I gotta put A, but I don't know that like... Alright, I will put upgraded Bunk in S, and the biggest reason why, so Bunk is a tier 6 tank, but it's a backline tank, so it throws bananas. But anybody that's attacking it automatically takes damage from it, which is the biggest reason I put the upgraded version into S. And it does get shit ton more health, obviously, but any unit that is attacking Bunk, or I forget the upgraded Bunk's name actually, but yeah, they'll take more damage naturally. They're taking damage from attacking it, so that can definitely help you out for sure. Ranger itself, 55 gold, nothing crazy. But Daphne, honestly, I'll put all the way up there in S. Big jump for sure, because Daphne is, again, one of the best backline boss killers for sure. So what it does is it like marks the target that she's attacking, and that target takes like an insanely more amount of damage taken. So against bosses, that's crazy good. And even if it's not a boss and it's just another unit that has, you know, shit ton of health like a mercenary or whatever, then she's nasty, and she's definitely worth the value. 125 for the upgrade, only 55 there, so 180 for a very, very solid unit that will never disappoint. I'm trying to find doubles. Alright, Samurai, or Eternal Wanderer I should say. Eternal Wanderer I'll give B. Kind of lackluster, but once you kill him, he revives and then he attacks faster. So that's solid. He's a solid early game unit. And then Samurai Soul I'll give A because he does that again, but again, you know, more health, more damage. But, you know, they die, revive themselves, and then attack faster, which is great. It's definitely saved me a few times here and there. But, you know, don't put full faith in them is all I'll say. Infiltrator I'll give B. So you can actually boost this guy as far as giving him some throwing stars, but 80 gold, magic damage, decent versatile unit for sure. Orchid I'll give to A. Again, decent, pretty good amount of health damage, and can give throwing stars again, so you know, you got like 4 gold left over, throw some throwing stars on her, she'll throw them, do some damage, and then go attack the units. Solid, nothing crazy, it's not gonna win you anything, but again, decent. So Buzz, the upgraded version of Buzz, which I honestly thought about putting Buzz in C, because when you kill Buzz or Consort, they release poison, which can kill units, but I will definitely put Consort in B for sure. 100% worth the value for an 85 gold upgrade, so essentially 105 to buy Buzz and then upgrade it, but Consort has pretty good amount of health early game, and when you kill it, you know, it does damage. Honestly, I have leaked a wave and then the poison hits and it kills it instantly, so it wasn't even worth it. So that's been funny a few times, but 100% worth the money for early game for sure. Nightmare, I'm honestly gonna give B. The potential is really there. It does do a whole lot of damage. The problem is it has no health, so if it gets targeted early or first, you're basically wasting 185 gold because it's going to die very quickly. But if you keep it alive, it's going to do a shit ton of damage. And I will give Doppelganger an S, because if you can get some auras around that man, or even just some healing units, that thing will literally just sit there and claw its way through the wave, no problem. No special attack or defense type, unfortunately, but for sure a solid unit. It is a little expensive to upgrade, but it's there. Peewee, well, this is veteran actually, so this is the upgraded version of Peewee right here. Solid unit. You can actually boost these to do a little bit more attack damage and stuff, but 25 to buy and then 90 to upgrade. Arcane Defense, very, very solid early game tank, but again, you know, like all these other early game units, they fall off pretty hard eventually, but solid early game tank for sure. Nothing bad. Priestess, I think I have to give Priestess and then Azaria S and A. So I believe it's Magic and Arcane again, so that's double good already for 90% of the game, no matter what. And Priestess, what she does is she does a decent amount of attack, nothing crazy, but when she gains mana two ways. So when she's gaining mana, if she has full health, she then does more attack speed and more damage. If she is losing health or has lost health, when her mana is full again, she regens the amount of health that she's missing by like 8%. So when you upgrade her and she's at low health and they're not doing enough damage to you, she's going to be massively gaining her health back, and it's going to piss you off. So it's definitely worth it. She's definitely a very, very solid unit for sure. Honestly, Gate Guard and Harbinger are lackluster to me. I don't find the upgraded version that much better to put it in A. You can put it in A because it's the upgraded version or whatever, but 100 gold and then 190 to upgrade. It does spawn units, but I've never felt like they've like won me a game, or they were the reason why I held or anything like that. The biggest benefit to them is that they're spawning units when they get full mana, and they can obviously spawn unlimited essentially, but nothing crazy to me. And then we have these units that you can quad upgrade. So Warg itself, I think, is decent enough to be in B, 85 gold. Decent early game tank. And then the upgraded version, so we'll start with Alpha Male. $200 to upgrade, has a whole lot of health, does decent damage. I'll put an A, and the biggest reason why is because if you build expensive units around Alpha Male, it gets worse. So you have to build non-expensive units or have it, you know, kind of solo by itself somewhere. So I think that's like a huge downfall for it and doesn't deserve S. But Lioness, I'm going to put an S. And the biggest reason I'm going to put Lioness in S is because when you build expensive units around it, it gets better. So you can obviously build up to 6 expensive units around it, and it's going to do like 33% more attack and have like 33% more essentially defense, which I believe is the max it can have for both, from what I've seen, which it could maybe do a little bit more or something, but it's about 30 something. But it's solid already enough. The fact that it has a decent amount of health and does decent amount of attack, but the fact that you can massively buff this unit, I think deserves an S, and more so because it's very, very good value for 85 gold and then 175 for the upgrade. You're getting a very, very solid unit. So that's my take. So regular Gargoyle. I think regular Gargoyle, honestly, I'm going to put every single one of these in A, because regular Gargoyle is the only unit in the game that, no matter what game it is, whether you have the Legion spell or not, Gargoyle itself you can sell for 90% of what you bought him for, which is the only unit that can do that. That's like his special or whatever. So solid tank anyway, 145 gold, decent tank. You can just use him as that if you wish, or upgrade him into these, or if you want to use him for a wave or two and then sell him and then buy a tier 6 with it, great, you used him for what he was supposed to be used for. But if you upgrade him, Ocean Templar, pretty solid damage, and what it does is, I believe it gives magic resistance or something to, you know, the aura effect around it. I think it's something like that. Or just more damage resistance in general to up to 6 units. So solid. It does turn it into a backline unit, so it's going to shoot, and it does regen its own health too. Not a whole lot, just a little. But actually solid damage, surprising solid damage, and, you know, defensive buff around your units, and, you know, can turn it into a backline if you need be. And then King Claw, shit ton more health, more damage obviously, but when it reaches full mana, which Templar does not have mana by the way, when it reaches full mana it slams down and does like a big area effect, damaging all the units, and, you know, again, solid attack and defense, amount of health and whatnot. So Gargoyle, I would argue, is the most versatile unit in the game, as far as you can sell them for almost what you got them for, no matter what round it is or anything, or you can turn them into an even better frontline tank, which he already is, or a backline defensive unit. So, but that is the list. Again, don't forget about Gatling Gun and Vulcan Cannon and Sea Dragon Lifebender. But let me know what you guys think. I think this is overall what it is now. So this is the very end of April. But this is about where I would place everybody. Let me know what you guys think, where you guys would place people. Who's your favorite? And we will see you guys next time.